Incredible, isn't it? You know, I can remember my first exposure to interactive video. I was only 6 years old. Shall I tell you about it? Well, I can remember being very small and pretty much afraid of everything. We lived in this big, enormous house that was filled with dark corridors and terrifying dark rooms. Well, on this particular night, my parents were going to the movies and leaving me home alone, and I was terrified. Well, of course, I had a babysitter coming, so I wouldn't be the only human being in the house. But then when she came, I wasn't sure how much help she was going to be. I mean, this was a 12-year-old girl who ran straight to the telephone to hold an all-night conversation with her best friend. I was definitely on my own. So I remember, I was going through the house, through the hallways, past these dark rooms that I would never dare go into. But I had to find a place where I would be safe and comfortable, right? I chose the library, my favorite room in the house. It was filled from wall to wall with books on these walnut shelves. And right in the middle of the room was an enormous, ornate console radio. I could just barely turn it on if I reached up on my tiptoes. Well, I went up to the radio and I reached all the way up and I turned it on and I settled back into a corner to listen to my favorite radio show, Dimension X. It was just coming on. You know, the particularly amazing thing about this episode was that it was about a little boy, just like me, and his sister, and their parents had gone away to the movies and left them at home alone with nothing but a babysitter. Only this babysitter on Dimension X was an interactive video babysitter. Actually, it was an interactive video room, and the walls and the ceiling and the floors were nothing but television screens. And these screens projected every nuance of sight and sound and even smell, so that you felt like you were in a completely different place, and you could pick the place you wanted to go. I tell you, it was an incredible simulation system. And like every great simulation system, the consequences of your choices weren't exactly what you expected them to be. But that's what made it exciting, right? Anyway, the interface device on this system was also amazing. You see, the children could pick where they wanted to go by thinking about it. They interfaced with the system with the power of their own minds. I'll tell you, I was blown away. I was totally with them when they explored the world. They visited London and Paris, and they traveled through time to ancient Rome and Camelot. Oh, and I was totally right with them when they decided that their favorite place in the world was the heart of deepest, darkest Africa, the African veldt. Oh, and I was just as angry as they were when the parents came home and told them it was time to go to bed. Oh. But then the parents said they could come back in the morning and play in the playroom again, and I tell you, I was genuinely relieved. Well, the next morning, of course, they're right back in the playroom exploring Africa, and they're there all day long. The parents have to call them over and over and over again to get them to come to dinner. I suppose it was the first time in history that parents actually became alarmed about how much television their children were watching. Well, these parents became even more alarmed when their children hardly said a word at dinner, and then headed straight back to the video room afterwards. They became a lot more alarmed, though, when late at night, when they thought their children were asleep, they started hearing noises coming from the playroom. Not very nice noises either. Elephants trumpeting, lions roaring, and monkeys screeching in the night, and this went on night after night. Then one night, the father awoke to the sound of somebody screaming. He turned over to his wife, and she was lying in bed in terror. They raced downstairs as fast as they could and pounded on the playroom door. They dragged the children out to safety, and they told them the next morning the whole system was going right back to the manufacturer. Well, just like parents to spoil their children's fun, huh? And these kids reacted just the way any children would react, I suppose, to when they get an order that's just too much to handle. They ignored it. Anyway, the next night, The parents are lying in bed getting the first night's rest they've had in a long, long time. And suddenly, they start hearing jungle noises. Elephants trampling around, lions roaring, again the monkeys screeching. And then, human screams start. They ran downstairs as fast as they could, and this time, the door to the playroom was open. They entered the playroom, and what they saw was incredible. All around them was the African veldt. Elephants were converging on the hilltop. Antelope were running right in front of them, so close they could reach out and touch them. Then all of a sudden, lions appeared out of nowhere. And the lions turned to them and saw them and started approaching them. They drew nearer and nearer. The parents looked at each other in absolute terror, and just then, the door to the playroom slammed shut. And the parents were trapped inside the jungle of their children's imagination. Well, I'm not going to tell you what happened in the end. But I did find out later that the story was written by Ray Bradbury. And I'm not going to tell you how the story reflected on the feelings of a little boy whose parents had gone to the movie and left him at home alone. All I'll say is that this was the best introduction anyone ever had to the concepts and possibilities of interactive video.